Goonhammer has partnered with Legalized Mischief to present you with Colin Ward's long-form painting videos. Like and subscribe, and follow Legalized Mischief and Goonhammer for more hobby tutorials.
Hey everyone, it's Colin with Legalized Mischief Productions. Thank you for joining me and welcome. And today we're going to be going over Vampiric cold skin tones. So this is a skin tone that I used to paint my Death Company. It's a very cold, kind of purplish bluish skin tone, and I really like it. I think it's a really interesting skin tone, and I think it fits a Death Company really well, but it is good for any kind of evil or undead or unhealthy, certainly unhealthy skin tone that you want to achieve. It can be used for any number of models. I chose to use them for Death Company because, you know, bloodthirsty, crazed lunatics, probably not looking too healthy when they're in that state. So I really wanted to communicate that with the skin tone. And the way that I go about it is by using a lot of glazes and a lot of quick highlights. I use glazing to kind of blend everything together. It's a very quick process. In general, it's a very kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of a rough process, if you will, as far as the highlights go, and then kind of glazing them together. So I'm going to show how I do that. It's a very fluid process. The important thing is just to keep in mind where you're placing the highlights. So we're going to focus on the brow ridge, the nose and cheekbone going back, and then down the front of the face and the chin. We want the cheeks to be really sallow and withdrawn, so we're going to make sure those are in shadow. And then I'm going to use actually just black ink for the eyes and the mouth to just really bring home that lost, kind of creepy look. I have the palette cam up because there's a lot of mixing involved, and I have like 10 guys plus a head. There's actually Conrad Kurz's head from Forge World that I did for my Primaris scale Asterath the Grim, which I think works. Asterath, probably not the healthiest guy in the world either. He's got a lot of baggage. You know, his job is executing fallen Marines. So the reason I have so many of these is because the glazes are so thin that it takes a bit to dry, and if it's not completely dry, you're really going to mess up the layers. So by the time I get through, and it doesn't take very long to like do a quick highlight on somebody's face. So if by the time I get through these, the first one will be dry and I can go to the next step. And I also just want to show kind of repetition, and I want to show how I go about like batch painting faces. Faces are tough, but there are ways to make it a lot easier. So let's get started. So I'm using paints from the Malefic Flesh set from the Lighthouse. This is a great set of paints. It's done in partnership with Nocturnal Models, but you can see these are all very cold. And what I mean by cold is you have the purples, you have the greens, very desaturated, like pale flesh and white flesh, very desaturated skin tones. So they're just really interesting skin tones to use. So I'll be using Malefic Flesh for the base coat, glazing in some purple shadow, also glazing in some Meridius Blue from P3, you can use, turquoise would work. Vallejo model color turquoise is darker than this. I wanted it to be a little lighter, so I'm using Meridius blue, white flesh to add in for the highlights, a little pale blue from model color for the highlights, and then black ink, like I said, for the eyes and the mouth, which just like really sets the creep level. When I do a kind of healthy Caucasian face tutorial, which I'll do, shortly after this one, we'll go into like painting eyes and stuff like that. But for these guys, no eyes, just black ink. And I am using the palette cam, but for some of these paints are, so that's the Malefic flesh. Like the white flesh is super watery. So first things first, we're just going to do an overall base coat. I'm not worrying about getting it on the hair. The hair will be painted after. The face is one of the first, well, maybe not one of the first things that I paint on a model, but it's pretty close because it's set in, you're going to paint everything after the face. So I'm going to paint the hair after. I'm going to paint this little kind of targeter thing that this guy's got after, and anything else I can just kind of touch up after painting the face. So the airbrushing is already done on these guys. The airbrush base coat's already done. So I just have to come in here. And some of these are Blood Angels heads. Some of these are Death Company heads. Some of them are from other kits. It doesn't really matter. You can apply this to a lot of different faces. It's really good for like undead and chaos, I think. Death Company Intercessor. Intercessor Sergeant, actually. Yeah. That's why he's got the Thunder Hammer, the obligatory Thunder Hammer. And I like doing the faces because I don't have to worry about kind of surrounding detail, and it just gives a lot of character to the model like instantaneously. Like you can start to see like this guy has very little flesh showing. He's got this cool rebreather mask thing going on. So done with him. So like Asterath's face, this face like still isn't dry. We're like still waiting for that one to dry. And because I don't edit, and I don't like sitting around and waiting for paint to dry, it's one reason why I batch paint faces like this. I also just batch paint in general, so this works for me. Whoops, I keep hitting the camera. But I do the same thing for normal faces too. Even though it's less kind of healthy Caucasian faces are pretty quick. Well, it's more base coat wash highlight than it is all this glazing. Just want to make sure I get back there. Picking up. But if you watch my video on like front loading, let's army painting and kind of front loading the work. I have, because I've already done the base coat, the airbrush base coats on my Death Company, on my Death Company Intercessors, I can go grab what I need for this tutorial. Like if I were doing, healthy faces, I could grab not only like an Intercessor Sergeant, I could grab a couple characters, I could grab, a sergeant from another squad or a trooper from another squad and paint their faces. and then just have those faces done when it comes time to actually devote to the unit. This guy's like guns blazing. And so it's one of those little things that saves me time. By the time I get to the unit, you know, the faces might be done, the gold might be done, the suit joints might be done. He does have a chainsword. It's just on his back. And that helps speed up, excuse me, that just helps speed things up by the time I get to actually dedicating my painting time to that unit. I already have some element of it done. And I'm using just a medium layer brush from GW, just a trash brush. Oh my gosh, why is this? Sorry, it's like jiggling a lot. There we go. All right. And base coats are done. And now the first model is dry. So now I'm adding a little purple shadow from Vallejo. And I'm just going to take some water with my brush and I'm going to thin this down into kind of a wash. So you can see the consistency there. Very, very. There you go. All you can see is a reflection. Oh, come on. Oh my gosh. Sorry, palette cam issues. Let me get this over on the other side. There we go. Woohoo! So now you can see how thin that is. And this is just going to be really just a wash, because I want to set that tone for these models. So just a real quick overall wash. And this is serving just to settle down in the recesses, give some definition. And we're going to come back with more purple, more turquoise, but this is kind of setting the tone. And you can see how fast I'm moving. Really just because now if I had all the little targeters and like the hair and stuff painted, you know, I'd have to come in here with like a detail brush and really, if I had the armor painted, for example, it's easier for me to avoid the face when painting the armor than it is to avoid the armor when painting the face. So I paint the face first. That way I can be quick. I will be quick about it. I think this is actually an aggressor head. Anyway, it's a cool head. This guy's rad. This guy's like the John Wick of Death Company. I like this guy too. There's like the motion. Then got that bow. These were so fun to build. These are Premier Scale Death Company using Reaver and Infiltrator bodies, which was fun. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with, because now these heads are pretty much kind of a dark, kind of a middle purple. So what I'm going to come over here and do is I'm going to grab some of this Malefic Flash and some of that purple shadow, and I'm going to mix those. Maybe a little bit more Malefic. One of the benefits to using a wet palette is just being able to mix on the fly. Oops. A little more malefic flesh. There we go. And now I'm going to start, I can see you getting under the light here. Now I'm going to start to lay in the highlights. So a little bit on the brow, on the nose, cheekbone, chin, and then that line on either side of the mouth. This is such a creepy face. It's Conrad Kurz's face from Forge World, and it's just super creepy. So it's perfect for what we're doing today. So again, brow, forehead, nose, side of the eye, kind of outside of the mouth there. And this doesn't have to be the most precise step that we're going to do today, because we're going to glaze it back down. There's very little room to work on this face. Holy moly. That's good enough for now. When we come in with the lighter highlights and everything, it'll become a little bit more important to be more precise. But for now, we're just kind of blocking in the general shape. So either side of the mouth, cheekbones, nose, ridge, and then forehead. But this guy's bald, so we're going to come in and just kind of going front to back or back to front. Kind of paint the top of his head there too. So brow ridge, nose, cheekbone, outside of the mouth. Can't really get to his chin, cheekbone, outside of the mouth, nose. There we go. You can see I'm like holding on to each model for like maybe 10 seconds. Like it's not, I am not trying to get like a final definition on this, because I know there's like 6 more steps after this one, so I don't have to be and that saves me time, right? If I know that this step isn't my precision step, I can come in and just get a general idea of where I'm painting those highlights. So by the chin, cheekbone, outside of the mouth kind of area, and then we're really leaving that cheek itself alone for now. So bald guy, back to front, back to front, back to front, back to front. And then the direction of the brushstrokes do come into play on the forehead. You want to do horizontal brushstrokes on the forehead. I don't think that's his nose. I think that's his rebreather. So we're going to skip that in the future. He just has like some cheekbones poking out. So on the forehead, if you if you scrunch your forehead, these are horizontal lines. So it's important when you're painting faces and you're doing those highlights on the forehead, it's important to go side to side. And so you always want to keep that in mind when you're painting foreheads, because it does matter. It is noticeable, and it does matter what direction you're painting. Okay. Done with that step. Moving right along. Now I'm going to take white flesh, and this is like, for whatever reason, this particular pot of white flesh is super watery, so I'm going to put a little on the palette here just in case it gets weird on the wet palette, because putting watery paints on a wet palette is always kind of an adventure. So now we're going to take white flesh, and we're going to mix it into that previous mix. To get the next highlight. That looks pretty good. Come back to curves. So forehead lines, nose, cheekbone, side, cheekbone, chin. Concentrate on the brow ridge. And a little bit on the upper lip, but not really. So it's starting to look like a face, right? And that's like, we're like 4 steps in. And you can see, it's starting to look like a face. And you can see here how thin this is. Like this is really not. But we want the reason we want the paint to be so thin, that might be a little too thin. This white flesh is something else. The reason we want the paint to be thin is because we want the work that we've done laying down the color on the previous steps. We don't want to just obliterate that by covering it up with like a thick layer. So outside of the mouth, cheekbone, outside of the mouth, chin. There we go. And this guy, we're just going to focus on the brow ridge really, and kind of the cheekbone on this side. And looks like he's kind of scrunching his eyes a little bit. And that might be a nose. We might paint over that later, but just in case we don't. This is I love this face. This face is so like characterful. So nose, brow ridge. I'm going to try and keep that kind of scar there. There's a little thing there. And now horizontal on the forehead. And then back to front on the top of the head. And then come in here. Cheekbone, outside of the mouth, chin. Cheekbone, outside of the mouth. Make sure we're getting side there. And blend that a little bit. Blend that a little bit. Then make sure the back of his head isn't just purple. Starting to look like a face. All right. So brow ridge, forehead, nose, cheekbone, outside of the mouth. And with the cheekbone, we want to make sure that we travel all the way back to really frame that face. Chin, cheekbone, thumb. And even though, like, when I do healthy faces, this is the same. I'll be using different, I'll be using healthier skin tones, obviously, but this is the same highlight pattern. Maybe a little bit on the top lip because you can see it, it's so prominent. There we go. Nose, middle of the forehead for his, like, scrunched up face. Cheekbone. Outside of that, chin. Sorry. That's too light. So I can just take a little more malefic and a little more purple and just kind of mix that all together. Get the excess off on towel. Make sure I have chin, cheekbone, outside, brow ridge. Is that even in focus anymore? Not really. There we go. Look at that. pretty straightforward. And this is just practice. Like, this is just because I painted so many faces. I used to be so bad at faces. Like a lot of people, I would just avoid models with faces. I played a lot of chaos, played demons, I played, but at a certain point, I was like, I really want to get better at painting faces. And so I went and looked at a bunch of, resources, and the best one was in the Vallejo model color, like flesh paint set, where they just had kind of step-by-step pictures of like where the highlights are on a bust. And I just took those and applied those to models, like an abbreviated version. So, excuse me. So, but really what happened was, I just started painting faces. Like I painted, just a lot of faces, on Marines, on, other models. I just made a commitment to not like going all Space Wolf and having nobody wear a helmet, but I made a commitment to like, no, I'm not gonna shy away from helmets. So here's Meridius Blue from P3. This is very thin. We're really gonna water this down because this is gonna have a dramatic effect, and I really don't want them to just turn their faces blue. So, so I wanted to get better at faces, and so I painted a ton of faces, hundreds at this point. So we're going to use this Meridius Blue just in the shadows. So I'm going to come in here in the cheeks, kind of around the brow, in with the eyes here. Well, I don't really have to worry about the eyes, but see, that's still too thick. I mean, I'm talking like colored water level here. You can't even really see it on the palette cam. Come on. It's supposed to be diffuse light. Special light for the camera here. So you can see we're really like colored water. You can see it on that cheek. In the eye is way too bright, but that's why it's going to get obliterated by black ink. But in that cheek, you can see it. Hopefully it goes a little better here. So shadows, kind of shadow, at the top of the lip there, other cheek. And if I get a little, whoops, I get a little squirrely, but not that squirrely. So just get a little water. I'm going to knock that down. So on this guy, it's just kind of back here, maybe a little bit around the eyes. Might stay. For him, we're going to definitely go like side of the head, definitely in the cheeks, definitely in this kind of closed eye here. Cheeks, kind of back by the ears, on the back of his head. And it looks a little shocking, but you're just going to have to trust me. So cheek, kind of top lip there, here. Here, maybe a little under there, that shadow there. But in his ear, but back by his ears. There we go. Same thing here. In the kind of lowest part of the cheek there. Kind of turn the corner. This whole part of his face really is in shadow, so let's hit that. There's no paint there. That was just water. Lower part of the cheek there. Lower part of the cheek there. kind of the chin area. And this really, 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 really sets that cold tone. This is where you really get that cold, unhealthy. So back of this guy's head, kind of around the mask here, temples. For obvious reason, this sets the cold tone because it's blue, right? It's a very cold color. In that kind of shadow there. Come back to Asterath here, kind of pump that up a little bit because I know how this sits in the model is. So I want to make sure I get back in the crevices there. Like his head is really low and is gorget on his model, so you can see the blue. This is a little better. So it's not once it dries, it's not that like neon blue. It is, this is good. So you can see how that changed the color of his face and the color of his skin. And especially in his cheeks, on the back of his head, like you can just see what a profound effect that had on the skin tone. And that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. Now I'm going to come back with a little bit of this purple. Very, very thin with the purple as well. And kind of deepen those shadows a little bit more. And staying away from the highlights, but again, it does not have to be the most careful application in the history of the world. So kind of I'm having trouble making out just what this guy's face is doing because it's like half covered and all kind of crazy. And what this will do is this will tone down the blue a little bit, but we're working so thin that blue will still have a presence. I mean, really, when I talk colored water, I mean colored water. And that helps it settle into the creases, and like I said before, that helps it let those previous colors show through, like that blue. So we're gonna have to redo the highlights on that guy's chin because it's just so. I need to go a little bit stronger on the purple there. Areas where it's too blue, I can kind of concentrate a little bit more of the glaze. Oh my gosh, I'm moving too fast here. So like there on the lower part of that guy's face, it's a little too blue, so I'll just hit it with a little bit more of that purple. Whereas over here, I like that a little bit more, so I'll go a little bit lighter on the purple. This guy, just kind of give an overall. I don't want the back of this guy's head to be blue, right? So make sure, give that a nice glaze. These guys are all falling over each other. Glaze that purple down. Glaze that down. Glaze that blue down there. And when that dries, now you can see that depth. Oops. Look at that depth that we have there in that shadow, like on his cheek there. It's a little blue. It's a little purple. It's a little creep show. Not that guy. Like this guy, you can still see that blue in there, right? You can still see the blue like right in here. You can still see the blue on the back of his head back here. You can still see it kind of back here. Everything around is going to be kind of black anyway, so I'm not really worried about that. But you can really start to see these tones developing, so that's exciting. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of that highlight mix with a little bit of white flesh. I'm going to take a little bit of that blue and mix it in there as well with the Malefic, the purple. It's just kind of a smorgasbord of all these paints that we've been using. Use the white to kind of lighten it up a little bit more. Use the blue to desaturate it and get that really cold tone. A little bit more blue. There we go. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to hit those same areas with the highlight color, the brow, cheekbones. Needs a little bit more purple. It's a little too cold, a little too desaturated. So I'm going to mix a little purple in there. Because that color was a little too blue. Now see, we got a little bit more of a flesh tone going. I don't want them to look dead. And so by playing with the amount of blue and the amount of purple in that mix, we can get different flesh tones. And this I'm just going to run through real quick because this isn't a huge highlight, but it's an important one. You don't want to jump too fast from your shadows to your highlights. It's one of the things that is challenging about painting flesh is you want to have a more gradual transition from shadows to light. If you transition too quickly, that's when it starts to look less natural and more kind of where you get that really like looks more kind of like makeup than like a face. Sure, why not? Okay. Good. And I also move quick because like I don't want to spend all year on one squad of guys. So by learning kind of learning some rules and kind of sticking to those rules, I can knock out paces pretty quick. I mean, we're 37 minutes into the tutorial, maybe 30 minutes into, actual paint time. And I'm, closing in on 11 faces. So, going to use a little bit more of that white flesh to bring this color up to the next. And this is very, very thin as well. Again, I'm going to keep banging that drum, but so the nose, forehead, cheekbone, chin, and these are a little bit smaller highlights than the last round. Something's off with Asterath here. We'll grab a little purple and a little blue here and try and I need to bring that down, and I need to bring his cheeks back. Something is off about this face. Can't put my finger on it, but maybe I'll figure it out here in a minute. Maybe I don't want to bring those all the way down. That's better. Okay. I'll get this lighter mix. Nose, brow, brow ridge, cheekbone, kind of down the side of the face, chin, cheekbone. This might be a little too light. Gonna bring that back. So I just mixed in a little bit more purple and a little bit more, no, that's too dark now. A little bit more white. This is the part that's hard, is kind of finding that mix that you're happy with. Because really you do need contrast to make this stuff stand out at this scale. So horizontal line, horizontal line, horizontal line, horizontal line, horizontal line. Brow ridge. Cheekbone, a little on the chin. And then now I'm going to concentrate a little bit more towards the front of the head versus the sides or the back of the head for that highlight. Pretty good. I feel like I've lost a lot of that blue though, so I might come back with it. That blue is really important to scheme. I feel like I might have gone a little overboard in trying to tone that down. I mean, these guys aren't looking healthy by any means, but I feel like I've gotten too far away from the blue. And I need to put some blue back. Thankfully, that is easy to do. But we're going to run through these highlights here real quick. Brow ridge, kind of middle of the forehead where he's kind of scrunching up there. Chin. Bring the background that side. Oops, sorry. So nose, chin, that kind of drop there, cheekbone, forehead, brow ridge, nose, brow, forehead, cheekbone, that line. Wish I knew the, anatomical name for that, because that would be better than, that line. But I did not do very well in biology. So, or anatomy. Either, really. Never took an anatomy class. Put it around. So you see just how washed out those faces are. And now, what I'm going to do now that I've finished, so that the next, this is the first kind of, real prominent highlight on these guys that might stay, right? Like, we're not necessarily glazing over this. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to grab, I should have done this originally, but I'm going to grab another finished, so this is a finished Death Company Lorraine, and we're going to see how far away we are. So we're still pretty far away, but you can see the blues. So I really went light with this. We're still way too pink. So it's always good, like if you have a reference nearby, always good to check it when you're painting. And just make sure that you're on the right track. Because I thought I was on the right track, but I need to push it. I need to push. Now I'm going to add in a little bit of pale blue to the conversation. Oops, let's get this. So there's that purple. There's a little blue in there. So purple's going to warm it up and make it kind of fleshier, and then the blues are going to desaturate it and make it. So the blue is where I got. Okay, now I figured it out. The blue is where a lot of these highlights on this guy came from. Is why they look kind of the way that they do. So let's get a little bit of this white flesh and really lighten up what's going on back here. No, see, that's starting to look like makeup. That's not good. That is not good. So let's get a little bit of this blue and a little bit of that purple. Make a nice cold glaze, very thin. And let's come back in here and try to neutralize. I'm going to try and neutralize some of those really dark shadows with this kind of cold. Ooh, that's a little much. That's a little much. Okay. Ooh, we are really messing this up. But we can come back. We can come back. Now I'm doing more of an overall glaze because this is just a mess. See, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes stuff goes really, really sideways. So a little bit of water, let's thin that out. That was part of the problem, I think. So, whoops, yeah. Brow, nose, cheekbone, cheekbone. Better. Let's see what that blue glaze, that pale blue mix does here. Let me connect that. Brow ridge. Big cool mustache. Okay. Okay, remember this guy? So now we're going back more towards malefic flesh and just going to run through those highlights real quick. Because that guy lost his way. He got lost to the Black Rage while painting his face. Face will give me the Black Rage. I can't figure it out. I mean, this is a tough technique because it's just so fluid, and it's something I've done a couple times, but not on this scale, really. So he's coming back a little bit. Eyes and mouth are really going to help that fellow. So let's get this show back on track. A cheekbone, forehead. And this guy. Hope this Same head as the other Death Company guy. I do like this head a lot. So this head's looking good. It's looking a little healthy, but that's okay. We can come back to that. One of the issues that you can run into is if your like shadows are too warm and you go with like a really cold highlight, it's going to be really jarring and have like this really strong contrast where you don't necessarily want it. So they don't have to be the same temperature, but you can't have them be too different. And I want cold. So I may have to adjust here. Get more of that pale blue highlight in there. Eyebrow, kind of, I don't know what's going on down there, but I'll highlight it just in case. So horizontal lines, and then back to front, 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 back to front. I know we're on the right track, so we just keep trusting in the process and keep pushing. Keep pushing. There we go. But that's looking pretty good. Let's get back in those cheeks. This guy definitely. This guy definitely needs a little bit more cold stone. A little bit colder. A little bit colder. I'm talking less because I'm more nervous because it's starting to go sideways a little bit, but we're going to bring it back. We are going to bring it back. Go colder. I just really need to I really need to push that cold undertone because I want to do some cold highlights here in a second. So now I'm going to come back to that highlight mix that I made with the blue gray. And I'm going to use that because I think that was the secret sauce last time, was that blue gray. Yeah, that is not a healthy fella. That's going to be buried in this gorget. I don't care about that. So, nose, brow, cheekbone, that thing, chin. Okay, so looking good, looking good. I'm happy now. So nose, eyebrow, brow, horizontal on the forehead, and front of the head. Cheekbone, and a little bit on the chin. Because now look, now we are pretty close to where we were. This guy's a little bit warmer, so I might do Might bring in a little bit more of that pale flesh over here. Or that white flesh, excuse me. There we go. It's a little warmer. Back to front, back to front, back to front, back to front. Actually, I'm going to grab Evil Sun Scarlet. And as you can see, this is like red, red, red. Because this is going to turn pink. And while we don't want... So this is the problem that I'm having. See this guy? This guy actually looks like he's super pale, and he has like sallow cheeks, but he looks alive, right? That's because his flesh is like a little pink. What's happening now is this guy looks just straight up dead. There's no life in his skin at all, right? Like if you compare these two yelling at each other, this guy's warmer. This guy looks alive. This guy just looks like a dead person, which... You know, if that's what you're going for, not the worst thing in the world. But not necessarily what we're going for. So, what we do is we take that Evil Sun Scarlet and we make the wateriest of watery, like literally colored water, and come in. And it's imperceptible, really. I had to have done this on the last batch. And this is literally colored water. Like, so thin. This was the step that I forgot to write down. So you can't really, it's not like going to stick around. And when it dries, bingo. Bingo. See how I just like pinked up his face a little bit? Just a little bit. It just like added some life to his face. Look at that. Just that little bit of life versus this skin tone with no life. Excellent. I knew I was forgetting something. I knew I was forgetting something. And it's this like water. I mean, this is essentially water that I'm brushing with, but it just barely tints. And this is kind of like an overall, you really want it on the highlights especially. But now if you do this too much, you're going to turn them into a healthy person. So you don't necessarily want to do that. But we do want to inject some life back into this skin. So that water thin red glaze is exactly what I needed. Haha! I knew I was going to figure it out. Like I knew I was going to figure it out. I just, like when I was quiet, I was just kind of like going back through mentally how I painted these guys and trying to remember. And my memory is terrible. So that's why I write all this stuff down. I write all these recipes down. I have my notebook open off camera so that I can look and be like, okay, what am I forgetting? What's next? So I take a little bit of that red, mix it in with that blue, pale blue. So you can see it's a much lighter highlight. I'm going to get a little bit more of this white flesh here. So that pale blue, since there's gray in there, is going to just really wash out that red and desaturate it, but it's still going to make it fleshier than it was. Perfect. Because before I was just kind of highlighting with gray. And it ended up looking really unnatural. So we need more pale blue. So I'm trying to hit that sweet spot between desaturating the red and just making it disappear. Much, 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 much better. Holy smokes, I'm a happy guy right now. I am a happy guy right now. I figured it out. I figured it out. Okay. Because I didn't want him to look dead. I just wanted him to look unhealthy. So now let's compare that to face that I've already done. We even still got like a highlight to go. But they're looking much, much, much better. All right. And we're going to do one more highlight, and then I'll do the eyes. But still, an hour to paint, a little over an hour to paint 11 faces is not bad. I will take that. So cheekbone, side of the mouth, nose. Chin. No, just using the white flesh to lighten this. Same mix that we were just doing. Now we're going to come in and really do the final highlight. Because you do want a lot of contrast on faces to be able to see them at this scale from, you know, any kind of distance. You do need that contrast. But now we have There we go. That's what I was looking for. Now we're home. That's what I was looking for. A little bit more blue-gray, a little bit more pale flesh, or white flesh, excuse me. Oh my God, come on. Top of the cheekbone, chin, brow, nose, brow, eyebrow, cheekbone, chin. There we go. Now just do a quick temperature check. Pretty close. Close enough, certainly. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get over on the palette here. I'm going to get just pure black ink from scale 75, Ink Tense Black. Get a little on the brush, and I'm going to come in here and just get, oh, come on. Want too much water on the brush, apparently. Come in here. Oh, that was a lot. And just black out the eyes. This black ink will cover anything. Oof. Just think it looks pretty haunting on the Death Company. And I also don't have to worry about painting eyes, so that's a plus. think it looks pretty spooky. Some unhealthy fellows there. So this is like probably the clearest space of the bunch. I think it looks really good. I'm really happy with it. Some of these are a little wonky, but they still look it's anguish, you know. Contrast on the camera can be a little wonky, but this guy's cool. This guy's definitely out for a good time. I think they look pretty good. And now again, kind of testing those against each other. It's pretty much the same base. Yeah, pretty good. All right. So that's cold vampiric skin tones for you. Thanks for tagging along through the ups and downs of that particular journey. That was fun. But thank you for your support as always. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments so that everybody can see them. I'll leave a list of paints in the description as always. And you know, it is one of those things that just takes a little while. It takes some practice, but you know, I'm really happy with that face for, you know, an hour and 10 minutes. So 70 minutes for 11 faces is pretty darn good. So yeah. What's that, 6 minutes a face? You know? Sure. If I can get that in 6 minutes, I'm happy. I'm happy. Definitely not having a good day, this guy. But sorry, I love this army. I get distracted. So thank you for your support. If you have any questions, you know, leave them in the comments. Stay safe, be well, and happy painting. The Emperor protects.